1916 was complex. Well, the world of 1945 was complex. The world of 2016 is intensely complex. You'll be dealing with terrorists. You'll be dealing with hybrid armies. You'll be dealing with little green men. You're going to be dealing with tribes. You'll be dealing with national leaders and local leaders. You'll be dealing with politics and economics. And you'll be dealing with direct fire and indirect fire. And you're going to be dealing with it all. And it's all going to be dealt with simultaneously.
Made it to Monday, 7/18/2016. I'm Scott Hensler. I'll have Julie Flores on here a little bit. You're on Tinfoil Hat Club. And normally I do my shows on Tuesdays and Thursdays for Scott Hensler Network. And then, of course, we do this show on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So if you haven't been to those other shows, they're more Christian-based. And this one's kind of anything goes. And so I want to just go through some things here before I turn it over to Julie. She's been doing a lot of research over the weekend. She's been doing the gematria, the symbolism, those things that have to do with the occult, and seeing how these renegades, these crooks, these criminals, these thieves, these monsters, these beasts that are running this world, that are running this country, are telling us at every corner, at every page, at every incident, all the false flags, what they're doing and what they're going to do next. And like clockwork, they've continued. Baton Rouge is another. We go all the way to Nice. We go all the way to Orlando. We go to Dallas. We go all the way back to 9/11 and all the way back to Kennedy. Julie, I think she still may be working on that. But anyways, the point of it is that we're living in a country that has been taken over a long time ago. So we're in a situation of tyranny. We are in a dictatorship. We are being rounded up like cattle. Now, for those who still deny this, then you've got a demon in your head. You need to get the demon out, okay, because you're delusional. You're not in reality. This is reality. And, the term and those words that they use to take people like us, like the term tinfoil hat, that's why I grabbed it, because anyone who has a tinfoil hat is considered crazy. But the conspiracy theorists, those who know the facts, are labeled as, like the DSM-4 and DSM-5, like Julie and I were just talking about, being defiant, rebellious. We have mental disorders, when in reality we're actually just reacting to the situation. So that's why I named it Tactical Situation Awareness, the particular show tonight. Now, when I was involved in law enforcement and search and rescue and man tracking and all that, we were trained that as we were driving around or that we were in a situation, to constantly allow our minds to access or to assess the situation. It didn't matter whether it was a threat or not, because at any moment it can turn into a threat. Many officers have been killed because they thought the person they were working with was docile, was not a threat, when in reality they were a very good actor and they were carrying a firearm and pulled it and shot the officers point blank. This happens. So whether you're driving around, in fact, I happen to know the woman in Arizona who lost her son. He was a police officer, and he was shot by a guy who was actually on a motorcycle. And he just did a wild shot over the head, pulled the trigger, and the bullet found its way through the windshield and killed her son. So you never know. And so the point of it is the tactical situation awareness is that the scenario that you run through your head, that if you're driving and you think, you assess that there could be a situation, what is your exit? What is your plan? Can you get out? Can you get out the other side of the door instead of out your side? These kinds of things where you're constantly working in your mind what's going to take place. And so that's why I named it that, because we are literally there. Okay, they're coming for us. They're coming for the guns. They're coming, for our property. They're coming for our children. They're coming for our bank accounts. You name it, they're coming for it. And they have, through this executive branch, through martial law, that when they declare martial law, they can literally take all of your property. They can take your car. They can take your house. They can take your money. They can take your kids. They can take you to the FEMA camps. And this is what they have set up. Now, the United States people have been asleep at the wheel. They have allowed this to happen. As you've noted, that Julie and I aren't real fond of the Christian church, because they should have been the watchers. They should have been the ones that blew the whistle. They should have been the ones praying. They should have been the ones doing what they were called to do. Instead, they've been fat, dumb, and happy. Well, that's going to end. It's time to slaughter the hog, and so they're on their way to the meat market. And I can assure you the door's closed for millions of those professing Christians. I'm sorry, the time's done. So who's doing this? Well, we have reptilians. Now, along with that are demons, grays, hybrids, and all the others. And I'm thoroughly convinced, living here in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and everything that I talk to Julie about as I drive around, and I've mentioned it before, seems like every third vehicle has some kind of ID on it, some kind of sticker. And it isn't just a joke. It isn't just something. These are specific to the category that they belong to, the group that they belong to, who they serve, and their, like I say, their ranking. And this is the land of giants. There's very big people here. And I've had people who come from other states up here, and the first thing out of their mouth is, what's with the big people? And I'm talking about women. All right? Women here start at 5'10", average 6 foot, and it's not uncommon to see a 6'2" and 6'3" woman all the time, 70% of the time, and I'm not joking. That's freaky. And I was mentioning today that many of them have arms that are not typical of female arms. I've seen just the general profile of these women, that they're perfect from top to bottom, but they're large. They're a whole third scale larger than most men. And it just goes on, and it goes on and on. I see bugged eyes. I see dark eyes. I see behaviors that are, to me, familiar with demons. And this is where I live. This is where I've been calling home for 9 years now. And I just discovered that the population here, literally in this time, from what I'm seeing, isn't just a small 1,000 here, 1,000 there. We're talking about tens of thousands of increase in this small area that was nothing more than a little quiet community that was along a lakeside. And when I looked at the history, when I look at things that of its past, we find out that Spokane, to my west here, Spokane Valley in particular, is one of the top 10 Satanist areas. To the east of me was a heavy witchcraft in the various towns, which has not changed. The Jesuits literally claimed north of me here. And in fact, what's really funny is, I forgot to mention, Julie, when I was going down one of the main streets there in downtown Coeur d'Alene, there were 5 Jesuits standing in front of an ice cream store getting some ice cream, and if that wasn't funny. And they're in their black attire, like a bunch of assassins, and that's exactly what they are. You need to understand that a Jesuit does go through mind control. They're broken and they're reprogrammed. That is part of their training. Now, we on Tinfoil Hat Club, Julie and I, are not ashamed of the gospel. We're not scared of the government. We're not scared of demons. We're not scared of reptilians, and a lot of people are. And it's because of your fear that has put us in the position that we're in, but also because of the brainwashing, the social engineering, and those things that have been done to us over a very long period of time have dumbed you down to where you never saw this coming. You know, that frog in the pot thing, and it's much worse than that. Between the fluoride, between the chemtrail spraying, and by the way, chemtrail spraying here is really bad. It's the worst I've seen anywhere, and the magnitude has increased tenfold until 2 weeks ago when I stood out there and I rebuked it. And I might have seen one or two, but I haven't seen any since. So you know what? I'm going to keep doing that. Now, if you haven't been to the other show, you can access everything from ScottHensler.org. You'll see Scott Hensler Network, and that's the basis of everything. When you go to that website, you can go to all the two blog talk shows. You can go to the YouTube channels. You can go to Second Heaven Invasion channel that I have, that I do all the 30 hours of teaching, but that's also done on YouTube videos, and so those are accessible. You'll see the playlist. And that was my second book that I wrote. The first one was on Jezebel and borderline personality disorder. And the Second Heaven Invasion is about what's going on out in the world. And then I have the condensed version, Hoodoo Voodoo, which is for having with you as a paperback for doing deliverance and breaking curses and spiritual warfare. So there you go. Now, I want to thank everyone, too, for supporting this ministry or the channel here. It has been an interesting year. You know, back in April, May, I was in this building 1 year, and the only reason I did that is because of you. And so I thank you for that, because I have, like this weekend, I literally had since last Monday through the weekend, I had 7 people, most of them, from out of town came through. And so I did my best on that. Now, most people I have found, in their disbelief or their lack of faith or understanding, do not fight. Now, as I talked about the tactical situation awareness, this is something we need to be in. You know, some of it's referred to as like being in the yellow zone, being in the red zone or the green zone. We're in the yellow zone all the time. Now, that has to do with gang stalking, has to do with psychotronics, has to do with satellite technology and drones, has to do with cell phones, cell phone technology, of those things that cause headaches, that cause illnesses, mind control, that we would do things we normally wouldn't do, or we don't do anything at all because we're in a slumber. And many of you know exactly what I'm talking about. So fighting is sometimes not an option when you've already gone to that point. Now, demons will do the same thing. Demons will get in your brain, they'll get in your mind, they'll get in your body, they'll weaken you, you'll be double-minded, you'll be disillusioned, you'll lose hope, you won't have faith. And so we need then to support each other. That's what we're actually called to do, as I tell you, of being a professing servant of Jesus Christ, a bondservant. That's what I've been trying to do for the past 16 years. And it's amazing that the ones who are my biggest opponents, opposition against me, are the very ones I've been trying to help all this time. So Julie and I have just made a decision then that if you're not going to listen to us, then we're going to shake the dust off of our feet, as we're told to do, and to continue on to those who will hear us. And so, again, that's the formation of the show here at Tinfoil Hat Club. So we're addressing the rest of the world. Now, the church in itself has been programmed, have been taught things that are not scriptural, and that has caused them to stand down. Because if you truly are in Christ, Christ who lives in us, greater is he that is in us than is in the world, we're able to bind on earth what we bind in the heavens, and we loose on earth what we loose in the heavens. And so through the power and authority given to us with Christ who's in us, then we're able to trample on scorpions and serpents. But since the church doesn't do that, then that's why we're in the shape that we're in, because the serpents and scorpions have been running amok, and we ain't seeing anything yet. So Julie and I are trying to do the best we can for these last days. Now, I talked about reptilians and so forth, but, you know, we have clones, we have robotoids, along with the reptilians, and then the demons themselves, fallen angels. And here's the other thing, okay? Humans are the biggest key to this whole thing. Now, there's a classification that I call brown shirts. I also refer to it as a brown shirt spirit. This is a spirit that was documented and recognized during Nazi Germany, that those who were potentially going to be incarcerated, or those who really didn't know who they were and were willing to go along with evil, were willing to go along with those things, sort of like peer pressure, like when you're in school and you go along with something you really didn't want to do. And what that means is that these people sell out God's people. They'll sell out anybody. They'll sell out anyone that's a patriot. They'll sell out those who believe in the Constitution, those who believe in freedom. And so what we have in the United States is a bunch of brown shirts. Now, Obama put that in place when he came into office, and before he was even in office, he was saying that he would do that he would make another force bigger and stronger than our military, which he called a civilian force. But in reality, it's brown shirts. And he has been doing that, but what he didn't specifically tell us also is that it's going to be mercenaries. It's going to be those that come in from the United Nations, Chinese, Soviets. Now, believe me, people, you need to understand that even though we supposedly are at war or against Russia and the Chinese and all this other stuff, okay, the world leaders are in bed, but you also need to understand that there is no honor amongst thieves. Okay, so they all, in the back of their mind, like anybody who's in the occult, thinks that they have one up on somebody else, think they have more power, more ability, and more right to do what they do. So just like the Japanese and the Nazis during World War II, that if they had prevailed, both in the particular circumstances they were in, whether it was the Pacific or whether it was in Europe, that once that took place, if we had lost, if Britain had lost, the United States had lost, and then our allies, the French and so forth, that they too would have gone against each other, guaranteed, as sure as the sun's going to rise, and who knows how that would have turned out, but they didn't, and that actually was the plan all along. See, we won, but we didn't win. Same thing with 1776. That actually was a stand down. We were actually sold out. They put us under British rule if we just stopped fighting them. Okay, we were sold out. You need to understand that. And it's been this way a very, very long time. And so again, hence the brown shirt spirit. So who are they? Well, they're your brother, they're your sister, your flesh, okay, your siblings. Could be you as a child, then your parents might be, and or the opposite. Could be your spouse. And again, when we talk about the so-called Christian church, in reality, none of these people are who they say they are. I'm sorry. I'm going to just say it again. If Jesus says, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. Well, they're not doing that. So then, therefore, I believe Jesus doesn't know them. And you know what? That's a big statement. But you know what? We're out of time. And I got to get my act together and get you up to speed and get you ready for this fight. Because I'm telling you what, the lying, the backstabbing, the slandering, the gossiping, everything that takes place, the selling out, those betrayals. Betrayal is a terrible thing. That's what we're going to have. That's what we have, and it's going to get worse. And it's going to be where there's a knock on the door. You're going to open it up. It's going to be some troops, guys that look like they've got a $10,000 worth of armament on their bodies, which was bought and paid for by you and your tax dollars, and they're going to pull you out, and your family or whatever the situation is, they're never going to see you again. All right? So humans are the key. Humans are the ones who allow evil to prevail. Humans are the ones, in their sin, allow demons to come in, allow fallen angels to have rights, that allow the veil to be pulled back and to step through. Humans, okay? Whether it is through sin, whether it's through those things of sacrifice, idol worshiping, idolatry, all of these things of an abomination before our God is seen as legal rights for demons to have areas. Okay, so that's the whole point. That's why the fallen angels and the demons have been doing what they've been doing, is they've been getting them humans to do the dirty work. Okay, now the Hadron Collider, that CERN, a lot of people are still experiencing ringing in their ears. A lot of people have a lot of white noise in their head. Now CERN's part of it, but there's also transmitters in your local area that are doing this. Okay, and that can be at microwave level, that can be at ELF level. Again, we refer to that as psychotronics. It's the white noise that's in your head, and it basically wears you out. You can't think, you can't sleep because something's always there. And then we have those that have the chip implants, and it just goes on and on and on. So this is, as we read Scripture, it's about wearing the saints down, and that's what's going on here. And this is all coming from the globalists, the Illuminati, the Zionists. Don't think that they're not part of it. They are it, okay? It's just another branch, all right? Now, unfortunately, the mainstream church in America has been supporting all of them, okay? And so the judgment, God's judgment starts in the house of the Lord, so there's going to be a big cleaning here real soon, all right? That door is going to get locked, and there's going to be a lot of people taken to the woodshed, and it isn't going to be pretty. And part of what we're doing is those Christians who are willing to listen to us to get you right, so you're not part of that. Come out. God's calling us out, okay? We need to separate ourselves, all right? Now, the social engineering, the programming that's taking place both in the church and in the community comes through education systems, or I should say, less than education, but it's all programming. It's all mind control, along with the electronics, the psychotronics, but also with food additives, GMOs, chemtrails, along with vaccines. Though all of this stuff is part of this, and excuse me, and so, and I've been sick lately too, so I apologize, but. The thing of it is we're here. Okay, so you need to be tactical situation awareness ready, period, please. Okay, now law enforcement agencies, they're implementing policies, circumventing laws, and implementing onto you situations of projecting onto you their policies, telling you that it's law, incarcerating you, confiscating personal properties, monies out of your car, monies out of your bank account, all of this stuff. This is happening all across the country. And reality, we have to remember that these things are against the Constitution. So these people who are involved with it, doesn't matter whether it's state, federal, county, city, it doesn't matter. This is tyranny. This is lawlessness, because it's not the law of our country, okay? And so these people are criminals, and they're seen before our Most High God as lawless, okay? So he's not happy about it, but you know what? We let it happen. So therefore, the cycle's going to go through like a borderline. A borderline, when they act out, you got to let them cycle. Just get the hell out of the way and let them kill themselves, all right? Now, arrest without trial, the confiscation and securing of those items, including you, a permanent detainment. Obama's boasted about that. These things have been part of the executive order, and they've been slipping these things in, okay? Now, when it comes to gang stalking, remember they're using cell phones, microwave, and ELF. So they can literally get you all upset and cause you to do something that these agencies then would arrest you for or classify you as mentally ill. Julie and I were talking about the DSM-4 or the DSM-4 and 5, and in there are categories, classifications of these behaviors because of the harassment that's placed upon you, that you would do something you wouldn't normally do, but you're brought to a breaking point, okay? And then you're automatically put in that category. And once you're in that category, whenever you're in the system, you're done. You're not coming out, all right? Now, there's a gentleman by the name of Bill Dean. A few years ago when I was on Walking Among Spirits show, we interviewed him, and he wrote a book called Smooth Criminals, and I've kind of talked about that. And basically what he discovered is that whether it's the FBI, CIA, DIA, the Marshal's Office, Department of Homeland Security, even the Secret Service, state and even local agencies, when they have somebody who's incarcerated, whether it's in federal, state prisons, or even counties, and they're going to be in there a very, very long time, especially if someone is on death row, somebody has received life imprisonment without parole, they'll give them the opportunity to leave if they do what they want them to do. Now, that may mean that they potentially lose their life in whatever they want them to do, whether it's infiltrate, whether it's go into another country, whatever the deal is. It's a better deal than rotting in a cell. And in the meantime, they get to have fun. They have money to spend. They live lavishly. They do whatever they're going to do, like some secret agent, right? And so I guess if I was a hardened criminal, I guess I'd choose it too. But unfortunately, in the meantime, because they are what they are, they get away with doing crimes against you and me, stealing our money, raping our wives, molesting our children, okay, because many of these are pedophiles. Many of these are they're incarcerated because of sexual crimes. And so we, the public, suffer because of this particular program that they've done. It's called Prisoner Release Program. And again, Smooth Criminals by Bill Dean. And I'm going to try and get a hold of him and maybe have him on. It's been a while, and maybe he can update us on some of the stuff that has been increasing. Now, when we get to the basis of everything, we have a system where we elect somebody that is supposed to be kind of like a guardian, kind of like a parent, someone that's supposed to oversee, like a CEO of a company, and that is the president. Now, through checks and balances, those things that we've placed in through our Constitution, between the House, the Senate, Congress, the executive branch, and the judicial system, everything in place is a checks and balance. But nothing is working anymore because they've all been taken over by the globalists, by the Zionists, by those crypto Jews, by those who call themselves Jews but are not. They are the synagogue of Satan. And so Obama, being himself a reptilian hybrid, whatever the situation is, a clone, he's got the big boy behind him, behind the wheel, the controls. Just like you've got a little RC car that you had as a kid, or you take your kids to the lake and you got a little boat that's an RC, okay? Well, you got someone driving him, and his clone is expendable. He's been through a couple of them. That's why you don't see the same picture of him twice. Now, he's boasted about killing Americans, using drones, electronic weaponry, and also through the executive orders, these things for the roundup in the camps that have the guillotines. Okay, so is he is he treasonous? No, not really, not technically, because he's not even a U.S. citizen. So technically, he should be tried for espionage. Okay, do you understand the difference? Because he's not even a U.S. citizen. So he hasn't really performed treason. Now, when he supposedly took the oath on the Constitution, both times that was fouled up, and then they went into secret chambers where either they did it on the Quran, or, as Julie's been pointing out, that all these other occultic ceremonies that they do, that, again, that what he's done is he's canceled out. And Julie's been pointing out that particular method in its witchcraft, what it does in the spirit realm is then takes those things and puts them into the demonic. So, but then when we look at Congress, when we look at the House, when we look at the Senate, when we look at those people in the federal and in the Pentagon and everything else, they are treasonous. And someone who's performed treason, they're punishable by death. Okay, so I'm telling you right now that everyone that's running this country, whether they're espionage or whether they're treasonous, they are criminals. And they're responsible for the death of of thousands of Americans. They will be responsible for the death of millions of Americans, and they will be held accountable before the Most High God for billions of people on this planet. And so if you think that you've been called to pray for them, you need to remember these are God's enemies because they're not even human. Okay, they're not people. They're demon possessed vessels of hybrids. Okay, and they are here to steal, kill, and destroy, and they're doing a very, very good job of it. All right, Julie, I just wanted to go through that and set the stage, and you've got a lot to bring to the plate tonight, so to speak. So I'm just going to turn it over to you and go from there. Go ahead. All right, Julie, are you still on mute?
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Well, Scott, when you were talking about Bill Bean, by the way, if anybody has not heard of him, he lived in a house as a child growing up, and the house was literally infested with demons. And these weren't your little bitty demons. These guys were throwing his mother across the room into her bed, her nightstands, and into her dressers, picking her up and dragging her down the hallway by the hair, completely split his family up. His dad died an alcoholic. His mom died horribly miserable. It was really bad for this boy. And his story is a nightmare. It's a nightmare. And although there are some of the places that are incorrect, The Haunted, which is a television show, did a movie or a show about his life in his home and growing up. And the ending is not right because, and he'll tell you that if he comes on, that's not the way it ended. But anyway, it's tragic. These demons literally caused his mom to just waste away. I mean, they literally abused her and threw her around like a rag doll. She would sleep on the sofa, and the sofa would be levitating up, 4, 5, 6, 7 feet in the air. And it was really horrendous. This guy lived through a lot, and he's lucky to even be alive. And he went to stay with an uncle, go visit, and I guess he told the uncle some things. And the uncle said, you have the power in Jesus Christ. And he went home, and this demon would just take things and just hurl them across the room. The stuff flying everywhere, all over the place. And he literally rebuked them and went after him. 9 years old, I think he was, and started going after this demon and all this stuff in his house. So you can go to The Haunted and look up the archives and look up Bill Bean, and they do have they did a show on his life with that house, and it's pretty scary, but it just shows you the tenacity of this guy. I mean, here he grew up like that, and look what he does now. He does Deliverance and written some good books. So anyway, if you're interested in looking at his story, that's where you can find it. And I hope you do get him on, because I have read everything I can get my hands on by him, Scott, and I just love him to death. I see what he went through, and he's lucky to even be sane after what that demon. It literally terrorized him, held him down, choked him, all kinds of stuff. So, God bless him. I my hat's off to that guy. But anyway, and what you were saying earlier about, the Christians and all that, I just want to make sure people understand, look, every religion on the earth, every single one, bar none, is a cult. They were all created by the Babylonian Talmudic people, the people that came out of Babylon, the Magi. All of these people, the Jesuits, are actually one and the same. All these people have created all these religions. Albert Pike stated he would do so. They were in the North American continent. They were going to start every religion you can think of, and they also named an atheism as a religion they were going to start. So they could divide up everybody and keep everybody going different ways. But he explained that none of them would be based on the true Jesus Christ. None of them would be based on the Bible. They would all be injected with the right of the Luciferian doctrine. So by the time they're finished with war and chaos in this country, what they roll out as an alternative, the Luciferian light, these people will gladly accept it because of what they're going to be so weary from all this stuff. And because what they're presenting is exactly what they've learned in the church all this time. So these people have learned to run in a pack, not separate, follow the leader, beehives, stab each other in the back. You know, there's no Jesus in any of those places. And I don't care if it's Jehovah's Witness or, you know, Baptist or Christian something, blah, blah, I don't know, whatever. There's no Jesus there. Okay, these things were started by criminals. So the Bible says that Jesus said that you cannot, a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. And every one of these religions were started by a group of criminals, Masons. Charles Taze Russell started Jehovah's Witnesses. Joseph Smith started Mormons. Wilson, Lumpkin, all these men that came here and they started these religions via vis-a-vis Albert Pike's, you know, writings. This is what happened. Okay, so you're not in a church that had anything to do with Jesus from the beginning. Never did. Called it that. So if you're invested in any of those doctrines and you're not going to drop them, well, then you're no different than a Jehovah's Witness or a Mormon. You're just as misled as they are. And you're going to suffer the consequences for it. And it'll be those people, Scott, those people in the churches will be the very ones who will kill everyone like us who refuses to go with the flow, because that's what they've been taught to do, herd mentality, that they will literally turn on us and they will kill us and say thinking they're doing God a favor. This is the absurdity and the brainwashing of these individuals in the churches. This is where they're at. Do you know, Scott, I think I mentioned this to you. I have had many people write me and email me about the information that I have been providing, the Orlando shooting, the Minnesota, all these different things, Minneapolis, Minnesota, all this stuff. And I have gotten so many people that said, if I thought it was a hoax before, I know it is now. I'm convinced after everything you just said. And all the evidence that you had was amazing. And it was overwhelming. So, you see, and I didn't even get into the deep gematria. I just did what I could see on the surface. Street names, numbers that were showing up in the article. That's all I did. I never went to the deep stuff. And if you thought that you were convinced with what I gave you, if I went into the deep stuff using all numerological charts, which there are like 5, okay, and then I cross-reference everything. It takes hours to do it. But when I do that, you ought to hear, Scott can tell you some of the things that I read off to him, and he was like, what? So, Scott, you knew when I read that stuff off to you, even some people that people think are Christian or this and that or whatever are under suspicion, they're popping up in the gematria. I mean, this is really something. And, Scott, I know that you were like, how did you get all this? And I'm telling you, well, it's 5 charts, and you have to cross-reference these numbers and all this, and you were just amazed. Remember that?
Yeah, I still don't get it, but but the fact that what you're saying comes up in order, it's referenced and then has something to verify it against, so therefore it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people that get this, and I didn't realize there were so many, but my sister in California's hairdresser, she was talking to her, and she mentioned, I guess, that I do gematria or something, and her hairdresser even said, oh, I do that too, and it's correct. It is all right. I mean, yeah, it's true. Everything that she's saying, it's true. That's how it works. It is absolutely true. See, the people who know about this are people who have, learned this stuff. I can't, it's so, you can't deny it because you can literally go back in time instead of forward in time and you can connect events to the gematria, and there's no way you can say it isn't right, because I can pull up events and dates of things that happened before you and I and none of us were ever born, and we have secular and biblical archaeology and history to prove that. And I could just name it all off, and it's actually connected, and it is in gematria. So it's amazing. But this is how Satan works. Okay, these occultists have a language all of their own, and that's how they work. And I think there was someone that said, well, I think Julie must have been a Satanist. You sure she wasn't a Satanist? Let me explain something to you. Satanism, if you celebrated holidays, you who said that, you were a Satanist. If you've ever celebrated a holiday, you were a Satanist. So you need to be careful about what you say about other people, because most of you have celebrated Christmas, maybe even still do. That makes you involved in Satanism, because those holidays belong to him. And you can dress it up with a Christian veneer, but it's still a satanic holiday. Not a pagan holiday, a satanic holiday. So you need to be careful who you point your fingers at. And secondly, I never did anything that was considered violent or evil. See, I was the one who was going, well, I'll help people with my psychic gifts, see? So that was my goal. I didn't realize that these were demons that I was calling in and going and helping me find information about missing children and what have you. They were correct, but the spirit I was getting the information from wasn't of Jesus Christ, obviously. God had told me one time that I had never accepted the evil bargain. I wasn't evil to start with, and I just didn't go down that road. I couldn't. I'm an animal-loving, horses, dogs, cats, pig, all my little animals, and you'd have to kill something. I could never kill anything, not even an animal, no. So anyway, that should clear that up. And why do I know all this? Because I studied in the art of witchcraft. I studied this, and I applied myself, because wherever I was going to be a good one, okay? So just because I know all this is because I actually have brain cells, and I actually got into studying it to see what it was all about. But anyway, I wanted to address a sticker that you saw on someone's car today, Scott. It was a very odd. It had the A on it, which actually, and there was two wings. There were angel wings on either side of it, and then it had the two round parts of the top part of a heart, but it actually is like a 3. But it could, people could maybe mistake what it was, but it's a 3. And then it had the other stuff. So what that stands for, you guys have to remember, I think most of you, if you have studied the Bible, the biblical text, I think you've been told that there's a beast. There's the beast, the false prophet, the beast, and then the Antichrist. But here's the problem with what you've been told. Once again, you believe lies. One more time, I got to say it. You've gotten sucked into a satanic organization, and you've been taught lies. Because if you go read, you're going to see two beasts. One comes out of the ocean, one comes out of the pit. Well, I'm going to ask you a question. Where is Lucifer? The Bible says that he told God, he says, where have you been? Well, I just came from, running to and fro across the earth. Well, it didn't sound like he's in a pit to me. He's running around on the earth. You understand that? So who's coming out of the pit? This is where the Quran is helpful. If you guys who have read the biblical text would actually study other literature from other sources, you would probably already know all this, but you've been poisoned and told not to, I'm sure. The Quran speaks of the Mahdi that will come from the pit, the well, the deep well, the pit, up out of the ground. The Mahdi will come, and he is their Savior, their Christ, their Mahdi. He comes from the pit. Well, our bad guy comes from the pit, their good guy comes from the pit. And he's blinded in the right eye. Okay? And another thing, I had some lady call me, and she's supposed to be a watchman for Jesus Christ, not. And she says she's never seen that, and the Bible doesn't say that. Actually, the Bible does say that the Antichrist is blinded in the right eye. So I don't know what you're reading or what you're not reading, but you need to go back and read. And also another point in Zechariah 11:17, he is called the idol shepherd. Now, throughout your book, this book that you claim to be yours, Lucifer is called the idol shepherd. Many times, he's the idol shepherd. And this idol shepherd is blinded in the right eye. So if you don't know that and you call me, you're going to hear it. Because you ask me, why are they covering their right eye? And I tell you, well, I've never read that in the Bible. Well, if you're a watchman, you're it's a pretty piss-poor watchman when you don't even know what the Antichrist is described as. That's pretty scary. Okay? If you're at the gate and you're watching Joel Osteen and all these other prophecy clubs and whatever people, you're not a watchman. You're actually part of the problem, and you're a wolf, because you obviously are blinded to these wolves in sheep's clothing, and you're letting them in. So, I wouldn't call myself a watchman if I didn't even know that Joel Osteen was a satanic spirit counselor for the satanic organization here in Texas. So, be very careful. Also, there is, Scott, that thing that you saw on that car, when I looked further into the symbol that looked almost like a 3, kind of, I found that on the 15th of July, 3 days ago, Scott in Wiltshire, there was a crop formation of that very thing. So everybody go to crop formations, July 15th, Wiltshire, and you will see it. And so if you see that symbol somewhere again, understand that was made by the demons, quote-unquote, Deliverance. So you might want to go look at that. But, Scott, have you had a chance to see that?
No, I have not.
Well, I definitely would. Oh, and by the way, there is a song that's being put to that particular crop formation by a quote-unquote Christian group, Beware. That is not a Christian group. They are saying that's from God, and here's some of the lyrics. In the light, you found me. Okay? In the light, you found me. And at the end of this video flashes a triquetra, and right behind the triquetra is the sunburst, the sun. That is absolute Luciferian doctrine. The triquetra is not a Christian symbol. Okay? It was held by Babylonian. The first time it was ever seen in history was prior to the flood. Okay? These were symbols that were look, the angels, the fallen angels taught them these symbols and carried right on after the flood all over the Babylonian temples. It is not a Christian symbol. Okay? So that's what they ended with, and the lyrics were so terrifying. I mean, it was the whole thing was, I could see the Christians now, oh, look, they're talking about Jesus found us. And the whole video is Jesus in the light, and I'm just going, oh, boy. And but that you guys need to be very aware that whoever that is singing that song, please do not listen to them, because everything they're saying is actually satanic in nature. Scott, I know you've heard a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, well, I've mentioned I can't even listen to most Christian music because in reality they're biblically so incorrect that it has to be coming from the dark side.
That's right. Well, one of the things that, Scott, that you said about being aware of what's going on, I think that it's really smart when they listen to this show and then they go and they start reading, and then they'll send me something and say, I think this was a hoax too because look what I saw. And, that just really absolutely just gives me hope. that people are paying attention and that you're getting the skills to go do this on your own. I mean, at least to have enough knowledge to go, something's not right about that. And, you see these numbers and you go, wait a minute, because you guys, you really have to be aware. Because what ends up happening is that you become part of the psyop, and you don't want that. You don't want to be part of that, okay? And if you'll notice, all of these psyops, and I'm still working on France, but I can tell you right now, and the Baton Rouge one was easy, absolutely, 777, no problem. But the one that I'm working on for France is going to be really in-depth. But remember, I talked about the 777. In Hebrew gematria, that equals order out of chaos. Okay, that's what it means, order out of chaos. Scott, I have a ringing in my left ear. Would you mind taking care of that?
Yeah, actually, Julie,
yeah.
I got it too. So just hang on a second. Father, in the name of Jesus, the assignment, those things that are trying to keep us from communicating the truth, that I come against it in the name of Jesus. As Julie and I come into agreement, two or more, in that, in the name of Jesus Christ, I forbid you. I send you back to the sender in the name of Jesus. In fact, the very nature of what you are turns upon yourself. And as this takes place, Father, we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Go ahead.
Amen. They really do not want you people to know this. The high-ranking Freemasons have this as their motto on their emblems, rings, and I'm sure you've seen it, and you've even heard George Bush when he supposedly screwed up, and he said, well, we will maintain, we will gain chaos out of order. Order out of chaos. See, that wasn't, everybody goes, he's so stupid. Look at how he talks. He can't even get it right. That was not an accident. I know he laughed it off like it, and he was playing the stupid role. Okay, listen, nobody gets where he is by being an idiot, okay? He's actually a reptilian, okay? Dude, he's not human, okay? So that makes him way smarter than you. All of you put together don't have 1/10 of the brain power of that man. These are reptilians. They're ancient beings, you understand? They know way more than... Man, we couldn't even play chess with these people. Okay, that's how smart they are. They can read your mind too, by the way. So this is what that you've seen on their emblems. It'll say ordo ab chaos in Latin. That's order out of chaos, and it is a code that the Western mainstream media will use in all their hoaxes or stage events or fake news stories you're going to see. Okay, it can also be encoded by the use of common factors. And one of the common factors is 343. Now, I'm not going to go into the list of why that is. It would take me an hour just to go back into the gematria and explain that. But just understand that 343 equates to 7 times 7 times 7. 777. Got it? Just remember that, okay? There are, let me think. Okay, in 2005, remember, there were suicide bombers that attacked 3 underground trains. Remember, I said 3, okay? And a double-decker bus in a coordinated attack that left how many people dead? 52. And more than, are you ready for this? 770 wounded, okay? 2005. 2 plus, and the zeros in gematria always fall out. 2 plus 5 is 7. 52 people. 5 plus 2 is 7. 770 wounded. There you got that 777, okay? That's how you know. And by the way, that Paris suspect, Abdelhamid Abaoud, that's the best I can do, in Hebrew gematria, his name actually in gematria is 343 or 777. That is actually his name. So I'm sure they made it up just to go along with that. And remember that Colorado Springs crisis actor, Ozzy Lacano? He was all over the place talking about everything. Well, by the way, Ozzy Lacano is coded as 777. Okay? So But you know what else was also huge? Okay, huge. On September 11th, 2001, the New York City Fire Department had lost 343 firemen. 707. It was a hoax. They didn't lose 343 firemen. That's 777. So that's how you know that this stuff is a complete hoax. That's how you know. It'll be encoded in there, okay? And in their history as a department since 1865, now I want you to hear this. This is what they wrote down. In their history as a department since 1865, there were 777 line of duty deaths until September 11th, 2001. Do you think that's an accident? Really? Just 343 or 7 times 7 times 7 was lost, and they have 777 in the line of duty from opening to 2011 or 1. I mean, come on. And if you remember the London bombing that took place, it was on the 7th, okay, 7th month, 7th day, 2005. 2 plus 5 is 7. So now you've got 777. Get it? Remember the MH17 that crashed in Ukraine on, now remember this, 17/7/2014. Remember that? So you have 17/7, and then you have 2014, and 7 plus 7 is 14. So you have 777. And you have the 17 in front. Now, the number 17 is an important number, and it can be found encoded in the Mossad cross. How they say that? The cross. What's the word for those? Icon or crest? The crest of the. You'll see their crest, and the number 17 is encoded into the Israeli Mossad crest. Also, the war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu contains 17 letters and was elected on March 17th, 2014. Like I said, 2 and 14. So it's 2 divided into 14, and you go 7 times. 7 plus 7. So you have 7 and 17 and 17. Okay? Now, Charlie Hebdo, everybody said that he got shot for writing some Muslim offensive comic. Well, that didn't even happen because the whole thing was a hoax, okay? The whole thing was a shooting involving 17 victims. And the Berlin, the number 17, you're quite often going to find the numbers 17 and 7 in that order. Okay, well, there was like some story that was taped up boxes containing 17 kittens and 7 cats found dumped on the roadside. And the article is nothing more than a promotion of the occult number. Okay, the number 7 represents perfection in the Bible, and triplicated represents perfection triplicated. Well, it's the ultimate insult to God to have this number representing death in major psychological operations. Okay? That's why they do it. And remember, I told you the other day that the Bible is used consistently and constantly throughout gematria. Okay? You need to understand that. Okay? 11:17. Zechariah 11:17. Okay? And I want you to remember that talks about the idol shepherd. Well, 11 is the master mason number, and 17, like I said, 17 represents death in major psychological operations. And there'll be other numbers there to go ahead and explain what happened. So just remember that these things are done a lot to the Bible, the biblical text. Once again, don't forget, the skull and bones 3:22, their number is Genesis 3:22, and it's talking about them eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and now they cannot allow them back into the garden because they will be able to be immortal. Sin, filled with sin, but immortal. Okay, so that's why it represents to them the attainment of immortality without God giving it to you. That's why they chose it, okay? And that's the skull and bones. death and rebirth. The phoenix, death and rebirth. So that's why they do that. The master number 11 represents death and destruction, okay? And 13 represents rebellion and lawlessness. 17 represents overcoming the enemy and complete victory with these psyops, okay? And 22 represents the master builder. 27 equates to 666 plus 666 plus 666, which is 1998. 1 plus 9 plus 9 plus 8 is 27. Okay, that's how they use the numbers. You have to know when to multiply, when to add. That's all stuff you have to learn. Don't forget, 33 is a master number, and it represents the deity of Christ, and it's also the highest level of Scottish Rite Freemasonry. Now, remember, okay, 33, the reason they picked 33 is because it is the year, okay, Jesus Christ was crucified at 33 years old. Do you understand? Okay, and the angels touched down at the 33rd parallel. Okay, so their gods came to the earth as our God was murdered. Get it? You see? And that is why they do it. Okay, 44 is also a master number, and it's associated with the current POTUS. You know. No bummer. Okay, 39 is a number. It's 13 magnified. Okay, 13 plus 13 plus 13. Let me see. The UN headquarters is 39 floors. That's an example. And don't forget the 666, the number of the beast. The word beast is mentioned 44 times in Revelation. Are you starting to see the correlation to the current POTUS? And I have a lot more than that, and I will do that if Scott's okay with it, maybe next show. So the 777, the God number 7 of perfection magnified, and it also is order out of chaos in Hebrew gematria. Now remember, there are many forms of gematria, okay? And to accurately be able to do this, you have to know all of them. Okay, all of them. And then you also have to know how to cross-reference, because you're going to see one will have 50 different meanings to that. But you have to know, when you look at the other numbers across the board of the other gematria scales, you have to know what those numbers stand for. Okay? You will often see me multiply 37. You'll often see me do that. I'll just multiply some numbers out of an article times 37. And people say, why did you do that? And I said, because it's a number for wisdom. But also remember, it is a prime number. Okay, that is a prime number. And if you study gematria, you will see that prime numbers are very important to them. Okay, so I might do any number of things with prime numbers and come out with an answer that actually equals what you see on that. Like how many shares. It'll say, how many times has this article been shared? And I'll say, watch this. And I'll multiply the date times 37 plus backwards the date, and then I'll show you, and you'll say, how did you do that? It's because that's how they do it. Every number on those articles, even the number of shares of the article, is actually a programmed number. Okay? It's not an accident. All right? And then the names Jihadi John and all those other invented names and phrases. I don't know if you guys have ever known this or looked into it, but Jihadi John, remember that guy that supposedly cut all those people's heads off. It was 88, okay, in English. And if you remember, he was 27. And he was born precisely 27 years and 13 days after Barack Obama's date of birth. Okay? And you're talking 27 and 13 are occultist numbers. You have Allahu Akbar when they scream that, and Muslims when they kill people. That also equals 88. Okay? That's also... and then there's also the saying, Muslims are evil. Okay, that's called the buzzword used by the Zionists, okay? And don't forget the number 88 is also a representation to Heil Hitler. Okay, HH. All right, A, B, C, D, F, G, H. Okay. There are 88 days between Barack Obama's birthday and Halloween. Last year's Capitol Hill Christmas tree was 88 feet tall, 27 meters. It was cut from the Chippewa Forest in Minnesota, which is where? On the 88th meridian. Planet Mercury revolves around the sun in 88 days. So I know you probably have some statement or something you want to add to that, Scott. I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Well, not really. Just listening to you. But we have to understand that everything is calculated. They didn't see. This isn't an emotional reaction. This is plotted. This is planned. This is who they are. We can react and do something really stupid and be sorry for it, but this is who they are, and we need to understand that's who they are, and they're telling us who they are, and by burying our head in the sand, then our derriere, our backside is exposed, and you know what happens there, and it's coming. And this is what we've done all this time. So everything that Julie's talking about in this, dissecting, when I worked for different electronic companies, we would refer to it as reverse engineering. We would take something and tear it down to find out how what they did with it. And so that's what she's doing. But again, since everything is coming up in an order, okay, with some reference, then how can you deny it? So as some of you may not be interested in this, some of you don't care, but it because of what she's doing, it also tells us what they're going to do next, and so that's why I'm letting her do all this, because this how to avoid or deny or not do this if I wasn't to do this, then I would be doing you a disservice. So there you go. Julie, go ahead.
Yeah, and when you see anything like ISIS, you have to know that it's going to be an occult number. And remember, 11 is a Master Mason number. Remember I told you it was 4. So ISIS is actually 11. And so that's what it means. I mean, that's the gematria for ISIS. So, just remember, everything they do, this is all coordinated, every bit of it. And by the way, the way these people work, if you remember Osama bin Laden, he was also 11. See? And of course, he was like a Zionist fabricated crisis actor that died, multiple times, right? But then remember this, too. From the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, they were established on the 23rd of September, 1932. Do you notice the 23rd and the 32 are mirrored? Okay? They were established September 23rd, 1932, to ISIS declared caliphate. From that date to that date is what was on June 29th, 2014. Remember when ISIS declared caliphate on June 29th? Okay, that's 29,804 days. And that equates to 777 months, 777 weeks, and 777 days. Do you see? It's not an accident. Do you understand? God told Daniel to the day that Jesus would ride in on that donkey. To the day. And all that he prophesied, man, it was bing, 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 right on the day. Okay, this is what Lucifer does. He has the future planned out by numbers. Okay, that's what he does. He copies everything our God does. So it's exactly the same thing. And I know people would probably never take the time to actually do any of this because it is very complicated. But I find it very coincidental that from the time the establishment of Saudi to the time that ISIS declared caliphate is 777, 777, 777. I mean, if anybody else thinks that's not a coincidence, let me know. But or it seems like an odd coincidence, because it actually really is quite weird. And I also want to show you something, okay? I have been able to connect Barack Obama to every single one of these hoaxes, okay? He is connected to every one. I didn't even try. It's just that's the way it is. I look for words and phrases that are out of place now, or that mean something in the language of witchcraft that you think means one thing, but I know it to mean something else. Now, remember, when I talked to you guys about this, I told you that in witchcraft, a witch will learn 2,000 words and phrases just at the first level of words, and it's normal stuff, normal words and phrases, and then there's some of it that's not. It's backwards, speaking backwards. Remember when I told you, learn to speak backwards, walk backwards, okay? And they learn this, and so they can speak right in front of you or write something down in an article, and you won't know. You're just going to pass right over it and think nothing of it. But when I read it, I go, there it is right there. Well, I was reading the story about the two people, the son and the father, that were in Paris that are from Texas, and that the boy was killed. Well, first of all, I got news. The picture, I saw him right at the shore in France, supposedly on the shore there at the ocean. Being that I've been to the south of Texas, and I used to live down there, and been all up and down the coastline, Port Aransas, Mustang Island, all this stuff, I'm telling you, that very much looks like that area. Secondly, they were talking about the little boy and the statement of the family, and they said the words that he lit up our lives. Now, I understand that you think that's a normal statement someone would make about their child. He lit up our lives. But you have to understand, whenever an occultist says these things, it completely, I just can recognize it as that language and not he lit up our lives. And especially when I see anything to do with light in an article in any way, shape, or form, and he lit up our lives, didn't say Brody lit up our lives, said he lit up our lives. And that, I know, again, you don't hear anything suspicious, but when I saw it, I immediately went, oh, boy, here we go. And so that's just kind of what I do. And I wanted to tell you what I'm going to give you in different, now mind you, there are many meanings cross-referenced to those words. And these are different gematria charts, okay? So I want you to understand what I'm saying. There are going to be different phrases, and they're all going to come from some the same and some all the other charts, okay? Here's what one of the things that that means is Bush, Obama, end of world. Does anybody find that odd? I know you do, Scott. End of world, Bush, Obama. You're like, what? Where did that come from? Okay? So remember, when these things come out and I go look up this stuff, I find some very, very, very strange things. I'm going to tell you that I connected Jack Van Impe to this as well, that there, whatever was done, he has a connection, even if he's dead. I'm just telling you. I don't know if he is or not. I'm just saying that he is falling into this line of deceivers, okay? Iron doesn't have a soul. Scott, you know what that's referencing, right?
No, tell us.
Oh, I thought you did. The iron doesn't have a soul, because in the Bible it says that iron and miry clay, and they won't cleave to one another. The iron is the transhumanism, all that, the stuff they're building to live forever. It doesn't have a soul.
Yeah, so I remember Quayle referencing that now.
Yeah, and also another one of the statements is deeper down the rabbit hole. Pretty sure we're deeper down the rabbit hole. I'm sure most of you would agree that we are. So there are statements that are kind of esoteric in nature, and you might have to look it up, but I also found this to be very odd. Chelsea Clinton or Ashley Green, i.e. one and the same, is in hell since 1220 A.D. Okay? Now, the reason why it says that is because the people who come here to be somebody, and I'm sure you've seen this, pictures of these people have been born. What was it, Scott, who was that? What was his name? The one that has supposedly hung himself but didn't, Robin Williams and Nicolas Cage and all these people. Remember you had seen all of these people in old pictures?
Yeah.
That's what that's referencing, okay? Because Chelsea Clinton, the person who you know is Chelsea Clinton, that's not actually who she is. Okay, the entity, do you understand? Chelsea Clinton would be a person who had a soul or whatever and sold out to Lucifer many years ago, and however it works, okay? And then when that person actually did die, the person didn't go to heaven. So you have to understand, they're telling you stuff that happened in past events, but they have to use names in the current, or you wouldn't know who they're talking about. So that's exactly how they do it, and they want you to go, what does that mean? Well, that's what that means. Okay, this is something that they do a lot. It talks about the Zetas abducting people, and I know that we all know that they are. And one of the words in the Jewish gematria is Sarah Palin is Satan, A.D., Barack Obama as a president. And that is referenced twice. Barack Obama as a president. Satan reads gematrix. Okay? That's what he does. And you will see that this is completely his baby. Obama, unthinkable offer. And that number is 666. Again, when it's every time I mention his name, when I go from one gematria to another, I'm going to have numbers that cross-reference, and it's every time it's 666 when his name is mentioned. Okay, it just stays that way. Babylonian usury, okay, also is in there, and we all know what that is. We use their money system, right? Genetically engineered, that's telling you how he is engineered, okay? Eye above the pyramid, that's the capstone. Who's the eye? Lucifer. Once again, there's his name and that reference to Lucifer, okay? You just keep writing that down. Okay, Oprah is a part of Elves, which is like a satanic group, okay? And we already know she is, so, you know. Operation Dark Heart. Once again, a reference to Lucifer, okay? Demonic consecration is also listed to remember. The devil and the deep blue sea, which is also listed. So, and I think there was one more, and it was the President Barack Obama, which was also referenced under 666. So there you go, Scott. It's insane. I mean, it's just absolutely insane.
Well, it's actually it's insane for as a whole, but to them, for some reason, it makes absolute sense. It shows you how evil they are, because everything that they're doing and everything that they're putting together is for the destruction of man. That's the ultimate goal. And so that means every living person on this planet that is, human will be eliminated, be used as food or slaved or whatever the circumstance for that individual at that particular time. And then plus we have those that haven't been born yet. But to not grab this right now, to deny it, to just say, oh, that's just ridiculous, or we don't have to worry about it. And one thing about the mainstream church, what they're really good at, is putting everything off. That's 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years, 20 years. We won't see it in our lifetime. They do that. And so that's just caused everyone to think that, well, it may happen, but it'll be not my lifetime. Well, we're here now. We're here now. And so everything that Julie has just placed together is a representation of that. It tells us that. How far had you gotten for the Kennedy thing? Was that something you still have out there a little bit?
Yeah, Dave 007 is doing some research on that for me, trying to find old articles. Because when somebody else is doing it to another listener and then myself, because I need the really old ones. Nothing new. It has to always be the stuff that came out when that happened. And that's proving to be very difficult to get a hold of that stuff. And maybe that's by design. And by the way, Scott, I wanted to ask you a question. One of the other meanings was Barack Obama, dog ale of Sudan, and I will explain that next week, what that is, or next show. But also that came up with 666 again. And I just want you guys to understand, every single time that his name is referenced in any gematria I find, right next to his name is the number 666. You just need to understand he's associated with the beast, okay, or the Antichrist. And I also wanted to tell you, planned genocide of America comes up in that. And the one other thing that I really found important, it says telluric current. And that sounds like a Scott thing. Then maybe you could explain telluric current.
You're talking about the actual magnetic field, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to have to look at that, but I believe that in reference to also what we call eddy currents, that there's a cause and effect. And so I think that's what it's referenced to, because I haven't heard that term in a long time. So otherwise, by applying a magnetic field or type of source, its effect or those things that affect it. So otherwise, it's not a one-to-one. There'll be some ratio that is different. But so there you go.
Okay, well, I know that it has to have something. If it's tied in with this, then there has to be some, there's a way that it ties in, and I'm sure you could probably find that out better than me, because I don't understand that current stuff. But anyway, just so that you know, these are the things that I want you guys to pay very close attention to. I want you to hear a story of a Dallas police chief that goes on to talk about the shooting. And now I want you to tell me if this makes sense to you. This madman that supposedly shot at these officers, he killed black police officers. Okay? Black ones. There was black people killed. Officers. And he then says, I want a black negotiator. I'm not talking to a white negotiator. I want a black one. Now, I want you to tell me, does that sound something that that man would have said? You need to really pay attention to what these folks are saying. They're telling you what's going on. Really stupid little additions of stories, okay? I want a black negotiator. So I went after I want a black negotiator, and I went and did the gematria. I'm telling you, people, these things mean everything. They tell you what is happening. Now, remember this. There was these people, right? And they supposedly this guy got injured in the Aurora shooting, and he got hit in the shoulder. He had 2 moles on it. It looked like 2 moles. And that was bullet wounds. And the way they went in, his whole shoulder would have been completely destroyed. And he's got his arm in a sling, and he's just raising it up and flipping his arm in the air. Dude, you couldn't even breathe. And never mind that the trauma that would have been done to him, he wouldn't be out of the hospital, and that whole area of his skin, all the flesh would have been black and blue from the bullet hitting, the percussion, okay? So if the whole thing is just a joke, you have to use your head. And while he's talking, he begins to recite tiny little details. The shooter was shooting, and I grabbed my friend, and I looked over, and there was her arm. Her fingers were in this direction. I grabbed her fingers. I dragged her a couple of feet. I got down behind this one chair that was in the third row. Okay, you need to understand. They do that to make it sound more believable, and because you've been programmed, you go right along with it. But where's your common sense, people? If you are in a shooting in the theater, do you think you would remember her fingers were lying in this direction, and she had this shirt on and that jeans on, and she was lying this way, and then I had to do this, and I was behind this one seat in row 22, and he was on row 27, and are you serious? Dude, I can tell you in an emergency situation like that, and it always makes him out to be a hero. I grabbed her arm, and I hauled her out of there, and I threw her over my shoulder, and I ran out the exit door. It was the one down by the thing. It was that third exit door, not the first or second one. It was the third one. That's where I went out. Okay, let me tell you something. When you interview victims of crimes like that, they don't remember any of that. Do you understand? You've got somebody in a machine gun all over the theater, and you're going to remember every single detail and where you were and where she was and how she was laid out, what she was wearing, how she did her hair, all these details. You're going to remember every bit of that, right? Wrong. So you guys need to remember, when they start recounting little stories like that, like Tiara Parker did in the Orlando shooting, everything she said, she lied. I could see it on her face. She says, well, and my friend got shot here, and he was laying this way, or she, and then I was that way, and then my cousin came over here, and then this and that. And she's going into this really great detailed, everything super detailed. When you have something like that going on, you are not going to take note of and then the shooter walks in and says, is there any black people in the stall? Nothing against black people, but is there any black people in the stall? Are you freaking serious? So I took that statement and went to the gematria. Barack Obama came up all over it. 666, 666, 666. Barack Obama, alien DNA, Barack Obama. He popped up all over it. Do you understand? You have to understand. When they start recalling little stories like that, you have to use your head. They're lying. I have been in emergency situations. If I had to write a report of what we did, I would have to sit and really concentrate and go, okay, what did we do when we, because I have training to do that. I know I'm supposed to remember this stuff. These people have likely never even seen a gun in their life, much less shot one, and they're being shot at. So, Scott, I really want to hear your comments because I know you ran into this when you were in law enforcement.
Well, it actually is difficult to recall things. If you take 5 witnesses and you interview each one of them, you're going to get something completely different out of all of them. The only thing you can do is run what's common amongst all of them together to get the hopefully the fact. And there are times that there are people you just have to discard, but that is one of the things that they work on training, is to always be observant that those things that are key, that bring truth, that's what you hold on to. But an average person has a very difficult time with that, a very difficult time. Shock, trauma, noises, unfamiliar, it's not so easy. Back to the telluric current that you were talking about, I was right, and it is in reference to the Earth's magnetic core, and the cause and effect of those changes in the Earth causes that magnetic field. So cause and effect, so I was right. So then you can transfer that over to ley lines. You can transfer that over to, Julie, I sent you that ELF receiver. So that ELF receiver would pick that up. So if you have somebody who's sensitive to magnetic fields, some of you are electrically sensitive, then if you're in certain areas of the country, let's say where there's a lot of seismic activity, you might have headaches, you might have dizziness, you might have reactions because the magnetic field that's being generated by the Earth's crust that's changing, including the seas, you may be sensitive to it. And who else is sensitive to that? Animals, birds, especially larger animals whose legs are larger on the ground to pick those things up. So, Julie, what was it in reference to again that you were asking me that? What was your comment before you asked me?
That was one of the gematria that was connected to the statement, "He lit up our lives." And I just knew when I saw it that it meant something else. I knew it. And it came up, Barack Obama, Barack Obama, Barack Obama.
Yeah. I see something that comes out of the Earth's core that makes an appearance. A sprite. Does anyone know what a sprite is? That's a type of lightning that makes its way through the atmosphere up into the heavens. And airline pilots see them. They've been seeing them for years, and they actually thought airline pilots were nuts. But it turns out that it actually is true. That's kind of what I see, Julie. Not a good thing.
Yeah, and I'm just going to go ahead and throw this out there and take it for what it's worth. But one of the gematria embedded stuff here was oil rig explosion. So I'm just letting you know that's what is connected and cross-referenced. So that may be something that's going to happen, or I don't know, So, but anyway, you can see that this stuff, Obama unthinkable offer. This is, and also references the District of Columbia. All right, we have to remember this man is absolutely connected to every one of these. I can't find one yet that he's not connected to. And every time his name is connected, the number that sits beside it is 666. Every one of them. And Scott, when I go look at this stuff, and I know I read some stuff off to you the other night, I cross-referenced and I went on a hunch with one of the statements that was made, and there was numbers attached to it, and I knew right then and there that the 77 and this statement that incorporated that was in fact going to be embedded with information. And when I got you on the phone and I told you everything I told you was Barack Obama DNA of aliens, Barack Obama head wound survived. Survived. And then one of them was Barack Obama, Antichrist. Barack Obama, what was the other one? Gets shot. Barack Obama gets shot. Barack Obama, third term. It was just, and Scott was going, where are you getting this? And I was like, because I just knew there was something embedded in that person's statement. I just knew it. And when I went and looked it up and I cross-referenced through the different gematria, just the Jewish gematria led me to all of that. So I just, I'm not saying he's the Antichrist. I'm not telling you that. I'm telling you what is embedded in those words. That was the codes that were embedded. So I have come up with this many times. The head wound, Barack Obama head wound, Barack Obama survives wound, head wound. All this stuff keeps coming up over and over again. So I just want you to be aware that these are the things I'm finding. You do what you want with it. I'm not going to I'm not jumping out there and saying anything. You go do what you want with it. But I just want you to understand that when I find these things, I have real cause for concern, because everything they've done all throughout history has been by the numbers. Every single thing, I can track everything that has ever been done to a gematria code. Everything. And remember, in the code it says Satan reads gematrics. And he does. That's how he does everything. And by the way, folks, God, Heavenly Father, Jesus Christ, does everything by the numbers. Everything Jesus said and did was coded in the Bible, everything. And that's why Lucifer is doing this, because he's copying our Heavenly Father. Do you understand that? 13 disciples, 12 disciples are apostles, and Jesus made 13. What happened with the 13th? He possessed by Satan, and he killed Jesus. He gave him up. So when they love the number 13, that is in reference to Judas, because he betrayed Jesus. And they, in turn, want to betray Jesus. Lucifer does, and his minions, his children. So just remember, even God has everything done by the numbers. When we meet Jesus, and we know as we are known, we are going to fall over when we realize the mathematical connections and words that are completely, absolutely connected to that entire book that he wrote. Okay? He is the ultimate scientist, the ultimate mathematician. And this is why Lucifer does it, because, again, he is copying our Father. Yep. Got it?
I wanted to mention, too, that when Satan, told Jesus that he would give him all of this, that he was lying to him, too. No one ever talks about that because it wasn't going to end well. See? And I don't know if anyone ever teaches that. That he could have given him, well, yeah, he could have, but it wasn't going to end well. And that should have been brought out in the teachings that they've been in the church. And maybe some did. I've never heard it. But I've never seen anything good come out of that. So, but I wanted to go back too on that the Earth's currents. It's also one way of detecting potential earthquakes. You can have more activity in a certain area, and then that's you're able to read that particular magnetic field. But it shows you how sensitive we are. I mean, think of our nervous system. Think of the small electrical impulses that run through our body, and how vulnerable we are and susceptible to changes from the outside. And unfortunately, some who have been chipped, some who are dealing with being gang stalked with microwave and ELF. You know this all too well. And just think, if you were able to control the Earth itself, well, hence you have the Hadron, CERN, you have HARP, you have all of these technologies that can alter and change. And so when they want to make everyone sick and ill and not be able to do anything, they can do it with a push of a button. And who's behind all this? Well, all roads are leading back to what Julie is exposing. So we have these people who are in control of the governments, in control of all this weaponry, and none of us are doing anything. None of us are doing anything. Now, some are trying to bring the message out and so forth, but basically we're all waiting for them. Do you remember when Desert Shield, and the joke was they didn't attack yet to become Desert Storm because CNN wasn't in place yet? Did you notice how CNN was there for everything? They were there for the bombing. They were there when they landed on the shore. They were there for the whole thing was orchestrated. But to us, we made the jokes that the reason they didn't turn in from Desert Shield to Desert Storm is because CNN didn't have all their cameras in place. So they've got all their cameras in place now, and it's orchestrated, and this is not a good thing. So, Julie, we have about 20 minutes. So, what do you want to go into now?
Well, you know what? I'd like to have people go look at photos of these supposed things that are going down, and I want you to look at photos. I'm going to give you an example. There was a shooting at a mall, right? And there was these two, a woman and her child. They were hiding behind a food case in one of the restaurants in the mall, and they were laying face down and hiding from the gunman. The photograph was taken from up above them, Now, I want to ask you a question. You may see that and go, oh, my God, look, those children, a little girl and her mom are hiding. Can I ask you a question? If there was an active shooter and he was blowing up everybody in the mall, why would there be someone standing over them taking pictures? Why would that happen? You have a supposedly something that goes to the moon and lands on the moon. And then there's something off in the distance right there that's filming the entire thing. Well, what was filming it? Who was taking that video? You saw they were flying through space and there was video of them landing and all of this. But who's actually taking those pictures and running that video? Hello? This is what they do, and they ask you to leave your common sense at the door. And you've been told to leave your common sense at the door through subliminal programming, school programming, believe the teachers, everything they say is God, listen to them, evolution is real, it's a theory, but it's real. Okay, you need to understand, you've been told to leave your brains at the door. And you enter into their sick fantasy in all of their sick little world, and you see the weirdest things. Somebody's taking pictures of a gunman at the Dallas shooting hoax, and there's pictures of this guy. And these people are right next to him, 4 feet away, and instead of running when he shot the police officer, they stood there and took pictures of him. And he walked right next to them, and then the gunman did, and then they motioned for him like, okay, cut the scene. And then he went the other way, and the whole scene was done. There's all their cameras, just got all the filming done. Do you understand? If you were being shot at or you heard gunshots around your home, would you not hit the deck? Put your kids to the floor. Listen, I had a very good friend who was bedroom sleeping with his wife, and it was like 12:30. Gunshots rang out like the street over from him. He stands up and goes, what the heck? At the moment he stands up, that bullet left the street, not the street right next to him, but the one next to that, through the neighborhood, through his wall, and right into his head and killed him. So I want to ask you, if you hear gunshots firing all over the place outside somewhere, or in the mall, or whatever, are you going to go toward the gunshots, or are you going to go the other way? Are you going to go right there, there's the gunman, and go, hey, look, let me take your picture, and start taking pictures? And then there's a lady that's supposedly covered in blood, and she's got her arm reached up, and her hair's all matted, disgusting, dirty, like she's been drugged through a pig pen, and all that happened was she came out of a mall with a bunch of smoke and stuff, and supposedly that's how she looked. Are you serious? And she's got her hand in the air reaching for this guy, please help me, and she's crying out. And instead of helping her, he takes photographs of her, and then that hits the media. Really? You're going to be with your camera running around taking pictures of all this crap. And they always get the scenes with the blood, right? They're always right there, man. And they get all the people running away from the bomb, and they get them while they're running. And, oh, look at this, we got it. People will look at the camera as they run by, like, take me a picture. Okay? Don't check your brains at the door. Use your brain. And, Scott, I know that you, in law enforcement, you know these things are not normal reactions. Even you, carrying a gun as a deputy sheriff, where you hear gunfire, are you going to go running right out in the open? Oh, there's the gunman. Can I take your picture? And standing right out in the open and start taking pictures of the gunman. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And stop and take pictures of all the wounded people that are asking for help, and you're just going to take their picture. It's insane.
Yeah, there are those who would do such a thing, but it wouldn't be for long. They might take one picture or something because they think they can make money off of that. Unfortunately, some people do that. But I can assure you that anybody who's in uniform, as soon as the word gun, a gentleman, that's one word that we called out, gentleman, and you know immediately that there's an issue. you're on that red alert, and getting your head down and getting behind something is absolutely what you're going to do. And the guns become all drawn, and in fact, the old saying, if something can go wrong, it will. And the training for officers, they make sure that they know that, because if you can get yourself killed, you will. And it happens. Just like Julie was saying about that bullet going through the wall, I could sit here all day and tell you about the instances that I've known of that very same thing that have happened. But as soon as one bullet goes out, there may be a point where those who aren't ready for it may think about it, but when the second one goes out, then they know they're getting down. They're getting out of the way. That's just nature. Very few people, I think, would not react that way. I wanted to bring up...
Oh, no.
Go ahead.
Always being in the right place at the right time to take the right pictures of people scattered all over the mall, hiding. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, okay. Let's take that one step further. When I went to Pennsylvania and went to the battlefields there and Gettysburg. When I went to Gettysburg, one of the most famous pictures they have of a guy who was lying, or he was dead, sort of standing up with a rifle in his hand against the rock that he was shooting behind. Well, it turns out they staged that picture. And the reason they knew it was staged is, one, it was the wrong soldier with the wrong gun in the wrong position. Someone finally figured it out. Otherwise, it just wouldn't have been. And it turned out that it was true that the guy who was taking the picture took one of the bodies, because, if you're familiar with Gettysburg, that was a bloodbath. It was bad. The creeks, the streams flowed with blood. And so when it was all over with, you remember, Abraham Lincoln came there and gave a speech. But they came in with their cameras. Cameras were invented. They were being used. And they took these pictures, and many of them were actually staged. So they'll do that. I wanted to bring out, too, that whenever you go into an education environment like a college, a university, that most of the professors, most of the teachers, there's very few who are actually conservative. Most of them are part of the game, and their goal, their job that they've taken on themselves, or whether they're part of a group, is to put doubt in your head of those things that you were taught from your family. So if you had a religious status, otherwise you claimed to be Christian and you believed in Jesus Christ or whatever, their job was not to get you to deny it, but to bring doubt, for you to question, for you to ponder the fact that maybe the whole time that you were in error. And by doing that, brings in double-mindedness. Puts you in a position where now that you have something that questions, your truth has been destroyed. And when you alter and change your truth, and Julie, you know about this from your past, being with Jehovah's Witnesses, you get knocked off kilter. When your reality has been questioned and altered and changed, that's a very bad time. Now, that can be a good time if the right people come in to educate you and get you on the right path, but unfortunately, that's not the circumstance. Case in point, hang on a second. Case in point, the Civil War, as we were just discussing, that right after it, there was such devastation in the country that there was a tremendous wave of depression, and now we know that as post-traumatic stress, because people that were in the cities, their cities were burned down, they were bombed, there were many, it was raping and killing. It was just a terrible time. So the whole nation was in shock. Well, what a great time for people like Albert Pike, people that like Joseph Smith, those that have brought in other things that came along as far as false religions, and they established them because the people were hungry, they were hurting, they were looking for truth, they were looking for a way out, they were looking for answers. Now, I can assure you that the devil is in the details in the Civil War. That whole thing was also staged, though the people that died were for real. But the true meaning behind it, there's awful lot of evidence that Abraham Lincoln was consulting with the Jews and being funded by that, the Zionist agenda, and along with some other things. Many things happened down in Florida, the false flags down there, and basically it was to cause the people to become upset, to cause them to stand, to be divided, but to each take a side. Hence we have Republican, Democrat. There's always a division. You'll notice that. There isn't anything that brings us together. There's always something that brings us apart. So when we were, as a young nation, coming out of the Civil War, then those who were experiencing post-traumatic stress were demonized, were blocked, and the generational curses that came from it, and believe me, there's the South is still dealing with that. And so what we have is we have individuals with families who still hold a grudge, still have beliefs that date back to there that basically are under a curse, and then we have a new generation that completely doesn't know anything about it. In fact, they don't know anything about World War II, and we have a generation that doesn't know anything about the Korean or the Vietnam War, with the realization how easy it is to take this country away from us. And so by the education system, by the brainwashing, by the denying of your faith, by those things that are a PSYOP, our Monarch, our MK Ultra, our social engineering, then we're divided. We're unable to know right from wrong. We don't know what our true stance is. We think that your truth and my truth, it doesn't matter what they are, as long as it works for you and mine works for me. Well, that's not true. Just like I told you what Satan did with Jesus, he told him that he would give him all these things, and Jesus knew quite well that that was a lie, that this was a deception. Well, the country's been under such a deception and the rebirthing, because we were rebirthed out of the Civil War. And Julie, you were pointing out, like here, the Coeur d'Alene Lake, the Spokane River bursts from the lake, and here was the Sherman Fort. And again, this whole area is Masonic. I'm seeing all the signs of the reptilian control, of witchcraft, of Luciferianism. This place is just a hodgepodge of trash. And so this nation has been based in that. And so the generation today, they're once called X, I don't know what they're calling them now, but they don't have a belief. They don't have an understanding of who we are. They're lost. And so they're believing the lie. Now, we can't fault them because we have to take responsibility for that. We didn't do what we were supposed to do. My father, my parents, and their parents, and on through, didn't do what they were supposed to do. And so we were asleep at the wheel, and so someone came into the cab of the truck and commandeered it. And now they're driving down the freeway and they're running cars off the road. And I say this to say that enough's enough. So if you get it, if you understand it, and those things that Julie has been telling us give a strong confirmation of that very fact, and actually show us the how it's being done and the way they think, we're looking into their minds. And we're seeing how sick and twisted they are. If you were to take let's say a demon of insanity, and so you have somebody who has, let's say, a psychologist who doesn't believe that mental illness is caused by demons. And you take that demon out of the subject who is being diagnosed as paranoid schizophrenia, and you take that demon and you put it in the psychologist's brain for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. And pull that demon out and do whatever you're going to do with it. I guarantee you that psychologist is never going to see the world the same. He's going to realize that evil does exist. Evil is terrible because the battle's in the mind. The amount of pain and suffering that can happen within a person's mind is astronomical. It's a never-ending. In fact, you need to remember that our spirit lives for forever, and when we're thrown into the lake of fire, that reality of pain will be all emotional. I mean, there's going to be things that cause it, but there's no escape. There's no sleep. There's no drugs. There's no alcohol. There's no relief. It's a constant. And so by denying the spirit realm, by denying deliverance, by denying that Christians can have demons, or that Satan exists, or that there really is an Illuminati, we've literally set ourselves up for the fall. And we actually are the ones who threw the rope over the branch. We made the hangman's noose. We got up on a box, and we basically took the leap off of ourselves. And so here we are. We're hanging. We're choking. And what a representation, since that seems to be a big part of the Masonic oaths. And Julie, I don't know whether you noticed or not, but my ears were ringing for the very strongly for the past hour. So obviously we're nailing stuff here, right?
This is what happens, folks, when I tried to tell Scott something this morning. We were, as usual, we'll start talking, and then all of a sudden he'll say, oh, and this person, I'll say, oh, yeah, that, and all of a sudden I was getting just like stabbed in the ear because they don't want us to tell you what we're telling you. They hate it because they know that you guys, we have the smartest listeners of all the listeners that listen to shows. We have the smartest ones. These people actually go and they get articles and send them to me and say, hey, look what I found. I mean, you guys are so smart, and you catch on so fast. And I'm proud of you guys. I really am, because you make me want to keep on trying and keep on showing you this stuff by the way you act. But you know what, Scott? They hate it. And right now in my ear, same thing. Right now.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're out of time. I want to thank everyone for listening and supporting, and we'll see you on Wednesday. So, all right, Julie, thank you.
Bye, everyone.